Today I want to try and cover in only 15 minutes because David stole 3 minutes of mine about delivering COBie, and it's not as scary as it looks. Now, some people may still think it's scary afterwards, but anyway, we'll go through it. Because I lost 3 minutes, just a little insight, Fulton Trotter Architects been together for 72 years. This year in February, we created Fulton Trotter Digital as a response to where our clients are going to require additional value from in terms of actually providing information management services moving forward. So I won't go any further on that. But I guess the key thing we always got to start with is whenever we try to talk about a presentation or tell a story, we've got to understand the reason why. So why in the world does a client need COBie? Why in the world is this of any value or any benefit whatsoever? Now, the idea is that we've got to this is the most words you're going to see on one of my slides. I hate words on slides, but I'm going to read it anyway. So to begin with the end in mind means that you start with a clear understanding of your destination. It means to know where you're going so that you better understand where you are now, and so the steps you take are always in the right direction. Now, this is so true about the way in some of the presentations we've seen today about everyone saying, well, clients start projects, they don't know what information they require, or they don't understand what they're going to need when they're finished. So the key thing is that they should have these understandings, or we should have these conversations before they even commence their projects to enable them to be able to obtain the information they need to better manage their facility and get better value when it's built. The biggest problems I see at the moment within industry is how disjointed it is. So we're sitting here as isolated little links in the chain, okay? So there's planners providing briefs at the start of the project. We've got designers that then turn around and take those paper-written briefs and then turn them into design drawings. Those design drawings are then passed over to the builder. Once again, there's PDFs from the builder, then has to reassemble and recreate it. But then at the end of the project, massive maintenance manuals are handed over to our clients in which they've got to start to operate their buildings. So it's all completely disconnected. Now, every single one of these conferences pulls up one of these slides, and we've seen it earlier today in Daniel's presentation. But the key focus about this presentation is about this stage in the handover. Now, I've got projects in nearly 12 months, almost at the end of their defects liability period, and builders still haven't handed over those manuals. Now, it's not like that's a positive at all, but the thing is that the client's essentially been given the keys to their car and they don't have been given the manual how to drive it or maintain it, which is really disappointing. And hopefully, moving forward, using different approaches, we can get better outcomes for our clients. So, I guess the reason why I'm so passionate about all of this is because I don't look at BIM as being building information modelling. I actually look at it as better information management. And I'm so passionate about open BIM that I always kind of try and think about ways in which we can link all of these phases together using processes and technologies to make life better. The biggest problems that we have in life is that some clients, through consultants that ill-advise them, or very short-sightedness, or what's going to suit them best at that point in time because they're experts in a particular tool, turn around and propose to clients, how about this proprietary solution for you, or how about this bespoke system that's only going to work on one software platform which ties them to it forever. Now, actually we've got a pretty good aged crowd in this room, so all of us would be aware of cassettes, but who still uses them at home? Does anyone in the room still use cassettes? Or anyone still use VHS? No one does, right? Well, you got Betamax over here, you know, but the reality of it is that our buildings and assets have a longer lifespan than these formats, okay? So when people start asking for proprietary file formats or bespoke systems and they take this approach, what we're going to find is that your data will have a life less than the life of your building. The other challenges is that if it's a bespoke system, you've got chances that it's unstructured data. And the idea of trying to use a proprietary or a standardised approach is trying to come up with a methodology in which you can have structured data which anyone can suck up and use. Now, we always love acronyms in BIM, so I thought I'd just give you a bit of an insight into actually what COBie stands for. So COBie actually stands for Constructions, Operations, Building Information Exchange. Now, COBie is a substructure or a sub-schema of the overall IFC schema, okay? Now, it was created in the US by a gentleman called Bill East, and it actually stands currently in 2 standards, in the US under NBIMS and in the UK under a PAS level BS 1192, okay, which we'll move on in terms of later. Now, where does this change things? So we talked about starting with the end in mind, okay? So for our clients now, not only longer do they also need to deliver or have a written brief for what they physically want in a building, but they also need to have documented by someone who's skilled in that area a set of deliverables for the information requirements. So that takes the form in a suite of documents, which once again in some ways is a paper-based information kind of chain, which I can talk about processes in which that can be dealt with later in the presentation. But essentially, on top of having an original brief for what you physically want, this here documents what information a client wants. So in terms of the COBie data structure, the way I look at COBie is essentially it's a filing cabinet, okay? So a filing cabinet that has certain tabs within it of which you place your data. So think of your old foolscap folders where your maintenance manuals are delivered. Essentially, it's a digital version of that, and it's broken up into those certain fields. Now, this is COBie viewed as a spreadsheet. So COBie is not a spreadsheet, but this is a methodology in which humans can read it, okay? Now, it's broken into a series of tabs, and if we were skinnier, we would have been presenting on the big screen in there, but because we're not, we're on this small one, so people at the back have got no chance in seeing this. But the key thing about this is that when you first look at this as a data, it's very, very scary, all right? You kind of go, oh, that's a lot of information I have to deliver. But the key thing and what we're going to focus on today is only half of it, because the back half of these information columns, I think that you can see on this screen, are not all mandatory. Now, the key thing to remember from this is that facility management requirements will vary, okay? Now, it doesn't, just because COBie is a schema, Don, don't trip over yourself, mate, you'll be right. Just because you saw that whole spreadsheet before with all of that data, imagine that as the fully kitted out Swiss Army knife, okay? As a client, you don't need all that information. You know, a client may only be a simple client that only needs a couple of pieces of data for each asset to internally maintain it. The other thing that scares people is that people think that COBie is this foreign thing. COBie is actually just a representation of the information that's naturally shown on our drawings already. So as you can see here, we have a floor plan, we have an elevation with the door numbers. That's exported into Celebra and the same numbers appears there, and it also appears as its element ID within a COBie spreadsheet. So all this is about structuring the data and compiling it all together in a logical, standardised format. So for a model element author, what does this mean? Well, for model element authors, we've only got 15 minutes, so we're now down to 7. We've got to find a way in which I can teach you this in 10 seconds. The reality of it is there are papers available, documents available to teach you on how to actually deliver this as a model element author. I've trained in this and how to export it from ArchiCAD along with Rob Jackson at a couple of conferences, but he's also the author of the book on the left with Bill East. So from a model element author's perspective, okay, so these were the columns of data that were presented to you that I didn't grey out. All of the items there in yellow and orange are the mandatory base requirement deliverables for data, okay? Half of these are actually handled automatically within your software, and the green are items that are only required if a client asks for it. So the reality of it is most of this actually can be handled within your model element, within your authoring software without actually doing any extra work. So when people talk about delivering COBie from a designer's perspective costing more, it can actually be fake, because nearly all of this is baked into our templates and how we work automatically because of the fact the majority of these required or specified domains are actually set automatically as a default to not applicable. So it's actually something you can already automatically include in it. So it's actually quite easy. Now, the bigger challenge I actually think is actually downstream. So as a model author, I can generate my design model, hand it over to the contractor, and then automatically he's going to have some fun because at the end of the day, he has to then compile all of that information in this structured format and hand it over to the client. Now, the key thing to remember out of this is that most of this information is already preloaded from our design team. Okay, so the areas in which our subcontractors and contractors are going to have to apply information is at a contact level where they provide their contact information, pretty simple stuff. They're going to have to provide extra information regarding elements, types and systems. Okay, so that's where their information is required. Now, from an early standpoint, when the construction industry's maturity is where it is, it's actually going to be quite hard for them because of the fact that they actually are not skilled, or the information they're getting from manufacturers and suppliers isn't actually structured yet. But going forward in the next few years, we're going to see manufacturers hopefully being able to provide this information very easily. So information capture tools. Now John's sitting here. We've got to go get your camera out, John. Now John didn't get to show this in much detail earlier this morning, but this is a really cool tool. Like we actually have within our office Celebrity Model Checker. It's one of the only tools where we can actually federate models from all of our design team and turn it into a federated COBie export. Now look at this lovely little plugin he's got here. It's not going to cost 10 grand, although you could probably start charging 9,900 and take out Celebrity's market, but this thing is how cool it is, right? So right now this is the screenshot. I like doing this live. Normally this is at twice the speed because we've only got 2 minutes left, but the key thing about this is that what's going to happen is it's not going to play because we have to do some magic buttons here. All right, so this is at twice the speed. You can't see the load in because of the screen capture software, but what's going to happen is this is a blank sheet. It's now going to start populating. Now this is I guess it's not a commercial piece of software. It's almost going to be commercial, which John can talk to you about later. But the cool thing about this is that you can start capturing information. This is just taking an IFC file and pushing it out into COBie straight away. Now how cool is that for a nice little plugin out of Excel? Now think about being able to merge multiple IFC files in together and delivering a federated COBie file just like that. And then it means that an information deliverer can then populate this spreadsheet and provide it to a client after it's been provided. Another tool that I've just been recently introduced to, which I found really exciting also, based out of the UK, it's an 18-month-old piece of software, is GliderBIM. So it's a cloud-based information management software. It compiles, validates, federates and exports COBie once again. Now the difference with this is where I talked about before about the problems that we have with regards to the information requirements being in isolated documents, a series of documents that essentially people then have to manually track, all right? So this piece of software is valuable, I guess, for all people along the design chain and construction chain and information delivery because the software sucks up Excel spreadsheets with information in it. It sucks up IFC models, but it also takes up and sucks in PDF documents for facilities management and asset information. So we'll just go through this one quickly and hopefully it'll work for us right now. So the first thing is that we can see over here, we've got the different settings in terms of what we have in our asset information requirements, employer information requirements or export information. I can't remember what it is. But essentially what we can do, what is it now? Yeah. Employer. But what's it changing to? Exchange, there we go. So essentially what it's saying is what information do I require? What am I requiring at certain stages? So you can set those stages all the way through. Then you have the ability to import all these different various files. So we can import through here IFC files, Excel spreadsheets, etc., to make our life easier. So we're bringing in some technical data from our MEPs and we're bringing in door and window information. But then we're also then going across to deal with changes. So essentially verifying all the information going across. But then we're sitting here and we can see as a report, visual report about the level of information that's been delivered versus the requirements that the client had. So therefore, this is actually a live, interactive environment where you can check that you're meeting all your requirements. So you can see here some things have been delivered and some things haven't, that they were required in terms of architecture. And then we're going down to our mechanical data, and most of this was imported by Excel to meet our compliance. The other beauty thing about this is why I like doing it live instead of doing demos on computers that aren't mine. You might get some other stray things that appear, but the beautiful thing is that here you can export COBie files directly out of the software. So once again, we get that kind of nice happenings. And we're going to finish on time. How good's that? So the conclusion. So I guess COBie is a great starting point for asset owners that aren't aware of what their needs are, okay? Now, you may find the information may be greater than what's in the base schema, but the reality of it is you can add to this schema that's outside of the base, all right? The thing to remember is that you're not always going to need every bit of information, so don't specify absolutely everything if you don't truly need it, because there's no benefits in capturing this information that you don't need. Model authors actually can deliver this information if everything's set up correctly within their templates, okay? So if someone tells you that it's going to take a lot of extra time for them to do it, And the reality of it is information delivery can be achieved through a variety of tools, okay? But I guess the key thing is that most importantly, I think I want everyone to take away from it is that although COBie may sit there and scare people as an overall system or as an overall schema, the reality of it is based on an ISO standard, so your data will actually have a longevity, which you're not going to see in proprietary file formats. Thanks very much.